Section 1 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This recording is by Michele Fry, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in October 2021. Kéramos. Turn, turn my wheel, turn round and round, without a pause, without a sound, so spins the flying world away. This clay, well mixed with marl and sand, follows the motion of my hand, for some must follow and some command, though all are made of clay. Thus sang the potter at his task, beneath the blossoming hawthorn tree, while o'er his features, like a mask, the quilted sunshine and leaf shade moved, as the boughs above him swayed, and clothed him, till he seemed to be a figure woven in tapestry, so sumptuously was he arrayed in that magnificent attire of sable tissue flaked with fire. Like a magician he appeared, a conjurer without book or beard. And while he plied his magic art, for it was magical to me, I stood in silence and apart, and wondered more and more to see that shapeless, lifeless mass of clay rise up to meet the master's hand, and now contract, and now expand, and even his slightest touch obey, while ever in a thoughtful mood he sang his ditty, and at times whistled a tune between the rhymes as a melodious interlude. Turn, turn my wheel, all things must change to something new, to something strange. Nothing that is can pause or stay. The moon will wax, the moon will wane. The mist and cloud will turn to rain, the rain to mist and cloud again. Tomorrow be today. Thus still the potter sang, and still, by some unconscious act of will, the melody and even the words were intermingled with my thought, as bits of colored thread are caught and woven into nests of birds. And thus to regions far remote, beyond the ocean's vast expanse, this wizard in the motley coat transported me on wings of song, and by the northern shores of France bore me with restless speed along. What land is this that seems to be a mingling of the land and sea? This land of sluices, dikes, and dunes, this water net that tessellates the landscape, this unending maze of gardens through whose latticed gates the imprisoned pinks and tulips gaze, where in long summer afternoons the sunshine, softened by the haze, comes streaming down as through a screen, where over fields and pastures green the painted ships float high in air, and over all and everywhere the sails of windmills sink and soar like wings of seagulls on the shore. What land is this? Yon pretty town is Delft, with all its wares displayed, the pride, the marketplace, the crown and center of the potter's trade. See, every house and room is bright, with glimmers of reflected light from plates that on the dressers shine, flagons of foam with Flemish beer, or sparkle with the Rhenish wine, and pilgrim flasks with fleur-de-lis, and ships upon the rolling sea, and tankards pewter topped and queer with comic mask and musketeer. Each hospitable chimney smiles a welcome from its painted tiles. The parlor walls, the chamber floors, the stairways and the corridors, the borders of the garden walks are beautiful with fadeless flowers that never droop in winds or showers and never wither on their stalks. Turn, turn my wheel, all life is brief. What now is bud will soon be leaf. What now is leaf will soon decay. The wind blows east, the wind blows west, The blue eggs in the robin's nest will soon have wings and beak and breast, and flutter and fly away. Now southward through the air I glide, the song my only pursuivant, and see across the landscape wide the blue Charente, upon whose tide the belfries and the spires of saints ripple and rock from side to side. As when an earthquake rends its walls, a crumbling city reels and falls. Who is it in the suburbs here, this potter working with such cheer, in this mean house, this mean attire, his manly features bronzed with fire, whose figurines and rustic wares scarce find him bread from day to day? This madman, as the people say, who breaks his tables and his chairs to feed his furnace fires, nor cares who goes unfed if they are fed, nor who may live if they are dead. This alchemist with hollow cheeks and sunken searching eyes, who seeks by mingled earths and ores, combined with potency of fire, to find some new enamel, hard and bright, his dream, his passion, his delight. O Palissy, within thy breast burned the hot fever of unrest. Thine was the prophet's vision, thine the exaltation, the divine insanity of noble minds, that never falters nor abates, but labors and endures and waits till all that it foresees it finds, or what it cannot find, creates. Turn, turn, my wheel, this earthen jar a touch can make, a touch can mar. And shall it to the potter say, What makest thou? Thou hast no hand, as men who think to understand a world by their Creator planned, who wiser is than they? Still guided by the dreamy song, as in a trance I float along, above the Pyrenean chain, above the fields and farms of Spain, above the bright Majorcan isle, that lends its softened name to art, a spot, a dot upon the chart, whose little towns, red-roofed with tile, are ruby-lustered with the light of blazing furnaces by night, and crowned by day with wreaths of smoke. Then eastward, wafted in my flight, on my enchanter's magic cloak, I sail across the Tyrrhene sea, into the land of Italy, and o'er the windy Apennines, mantled and musical with pines. The palaces, the princely halls, the doors of houses, and the walls of churches and of belfry towers, cloister and castle, street and mart, are garlanded and gay with flowers that blossom in the fields of art. Here Gubbio's workshops gleam and glow with brilliant iridescent dyes, the dazzling whiteness of the snow, the cobalt blue of summer skies, and vase and scutcheon, cup and plate, in perfect finish, emulate Faenza, Florence, Pizarro. Forth from Urbino's gate there came a youth with the angelic name of Raphael, in form and face himself angelic and divine in arts of color and design. From him Francesco Zanto caught something of his transcendent grace, and into fictile fabrics brought suggestions of the master's thought. Nor less, Maestro Giorgio shines with madra pearl and golden lines of arabesques, and interweaves his birds and fruits and flowers and leaves about some landscape, shaded brown with olive tints on rock and town. Behold this cup within whose bowl, upon a ground of deepest blue, with yellow lustered stars o'erlaid, colors of every tint and hue mingle in one harmonious whole. With large blue eyes and steadfast gaze, her yellow hair in net and braid, necklace and earrings all ablaze with golden luster o'er the glaze, a woman's portrait. On the scroll, Canna the Beautiful, a name forgotten save for such brief fame as this memorial can bestow, a gift some lover long ago gave with his heart to this fair dame. A nobler title to renown is thine, O pleasant Tuscan town, seated beside the Arno's stream, for Luca della Robbia there created forms so wondrous fair, they made thy sovereignty supreme. These choristers with lips of stone, whose music is not heard but seen, still chant as from their organ screen their Maker's praise. Nor these alone, but the more fragile forms of clay, hardly less beautiful than they, these saints and angels that adorn the walls of hospitals, and tell the story of good deeds so well that poverty seems less forlorn, and life more like a holiday. Here in this old neglected church that long eludes the traveller's search lies the dead bishop on his tomb. Earth upon earth he slumbering lies, lifelike and deathlike in the gloom. Garlands of fruit and flowers in bloom and foliage deck his resting place. A shadow in the sightless eyes, a pallor on the patient face, made perfect by the furnace heat. All earthly passions and desires burnt out by purgatorial fires, seeming to say, our years are fleet, and to the weary death is sweet. But the most wonderful of all the ornaments on tomb or wall that grace the fair Estonian shores are those the faithful earth restores, near some Apulian town concealed, in vineyard or in harvest field. Vases and urns and bas-reliefs, memorials of forgotten griefs, or records of heroic deeds of demigods and mighty chiefs, figures that almost move and speak, and buried amid mold and weeds, still in their attitudes attest the presence of the graceful Greek, Achilles in his armor dressed, Alcides with the Cretan bull, Aphrodite with her boy, or lovely Helena of Troy, still living and still beautiful. Turn, turn, my wheel, 'tis nature's plan the child should grow into the man grow wrinkled, old, and gray. In youth the heart exalts and sings, the pulses leap, the feet have wings. In age the cricket chirps and brings the harvest home of day. And now the winds that southward blow and cool the hot Sicilian isle bear me away. I see below the long line of the Libyan Nile, flooding and feeding the parched lands with annual ebb and overflow. A fallen palm whose branches lie beneath the Abyssinian sky, whose roots are in Egyptian sands. On either bank huge water-wheels, belted with jars and dripping weeds, send forth their melancholy moans, as if, in their grey mantles hid, dead anchorites of the Thebaid knelt on the shore and told their beads, beating their breasts with loud appeals and penitential tears and groans. This city, walled and thickly set with glittering mosque and minaret, is Cairo, in whose gay bazaars the dreaming traveller first inhales the perfume of Arabian gales, and sees the fabulous earthen jars, huge as were those wherein the maid Morgania found the 40 thieves concealed in midnight ambuscade, and seeing more than half believes the fascinating tales that run through all the 1,000 nights and one told by the fair Scheherazade. More strange and wonderful than these are the Egyptian deities, Ammon and Emoth, and the grand Osiris holding in his hand the lotus, Isis crowned and veiled, the sacred ibis and the sphinx, bracelets with blue enameled links, the scarabee in emerald mailed, or spreading wide his funeral wings, lamps that perchance their night watch kept, or Cleopatra while she slept, all plundered from the tombs of kings. Turn, turn, my wheel, the human race of every tongue, of every place, Caucasian, Coptic, or Malay, all that inhabit this great earth, whatever be their rank or worth, are kindred and allied by birth, and made of the same clay. O'er desert sands, or gulf and bay, o'er Ganges and o'er Himalay, bird-like I fly, and flying sing to flowery kingdoms of Cathay, and bird-like poise on balanced wing above the town of King Taching, a burning town, or seeming so, 3,000 furnaces that glow incessantly and fill the air with smoke, uprising gyre on gyre, and painted by the lurid glare of jets and flashes of red fire. As leaves that in the autumn fall, spotted and veined with various hues, are swept along the avenues and lie in heaps by hedge and wall, so from this grove of chimneys whirled to all the markets of the world, these porcelain leaves are wafted on. Light yellow leaves with spots and stains of violet and of crimson dye, or tender azure of the sky, just washed by gentle April rains, and beautiful with celadon. Nor less the coarser household wares, the willow pattern that we knew in childhood, with its bridge of blue leading to unknown thoroughfares, the solitary man who stares at the white river flowing through its arches, the fantastic trees and wild perspective of the view. And intermingled among these, the tiles that in our nurseries filled us with wonder and delight, or haunted us in dreams at night. And yonder by Nankin, behold, the tower of porcelain, strange and old, uplifting to the astonished skies its ninefold painted balconies, with balustrades of twining leaves and roofs of tile, beneath whose eaves hang porcelain bells that all the time ring with a soft melodious chime, while the whole fabric is ablaze with varied tints, all fused in one great mass of color, like a maze of flowers illumined by the sun. Turn, turn, my wheel, what is begun at daybreak must at dark be done. Tomorrow will be another day. Tomorrow the hot furnace flame will search the heart and try the frame, and stamp with honor or with shame these vessels made of clay. Cradled and rocked in eastern seas, the islands of the Japanese beneath me lie. O'er lake and plain the stork, the heron, and the crane through the clear realms of azure drift, and on the hillside I can see the villages of Aimery, whose thronged and flaming workshops lift their twisted columns of smoke on high. Cloud cloisters that in ruins lie, with sunshine streaming through each rift, and broken arches of blue sky. All the bright flowers that fill the land, ripple of waves on rock and sand, the snow of Fujiyama's cone, the midnight heaven so thickly sown with constellations of bright stars, the leaves that rustle, the reeds that make a whisper by each stream and lake, the saffron dawn, the sunset red, are painted on these lovely jars. Again the skylark sings, again the stork, the heron, and the crane float through the azure overhead, the counterfeit and counterpart of nature reproduced in art. Art is the child of nature, yes, her darling child, in whom we trace the features of the mother's face, her aspect and her attitude, all her majestic loveliness, chastened and softened and subdued into a more attractive grace, and with a human sense imbued. He is the greatest artist, then, whether of pencil or of pen, who follows nature. Never man, as artist or as artisan, pursuing his own fantasies, can touch the human heart, or please or satisfy our nobler needs, as he who sets his willing feet in nature's footprints, light and fleet, and follows fearless where she leads. Thus mused I on that morn in May, wrapped in my visions like a seer, whose eyes behold not what is near, but only what is far away. when suddenly sounding peal on peal, the church bell from the neighboring town proclaimed the welcome hour of noon. The potter heard and stopped his wheel, his apron on the grass threw down, whistled his quiet little tune, not over loud nor over long, and ended thus his simple song. Stop, stop, my wheel, too soon, the noon will be the afternoon, too soon today be yesterday. Behind us in our path we cast the broken potsherds of the past, and all are ground to dust at last, and trodden into clay. End of Section 1. Kéramos.
Section 2 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The Herons of Elmwood. Warm and still is the summer night, as here by the river's brink I wander. White overhead are the stars, and white the glimmering lamps on the hillside yonder. Silent are all the sounds of day, nothing I hear but the chirp of crickets, and the cry of the herons winging their way o'er the poet's house in the elmwood thickets. Call to him, herons, as slowly you pass to your roosts in the haunts of the exiled thrushes. Sing him the song of the green morass, and the tides that water the reeds and rushes. Sing him the mystical song of the heron, and the secret that baffles our utmost seeking. For only a sound of lament we discern, and cannot interpret the words you are speaking. Sing of the air, and the wild delight of wings that uplift and winds that uphold you, the joy of freedom, the rapture of flight, through the drift of the floating mists that enfold you. Of the landscape lying so far below, with its towns and rivers and desert places, and the splendor of the light above and the glow of the limitless blue ethereal spaces. Ask him if songs of the troubadours, or of many singers in old black letter, sound in his ear more sweet than yours, and if yours are not sweeter and wilder and better. Sing to him, say to him, here at his gate, where the boughs of the stately elms are meeting, someone hath lingered to meditate, and send him unseen this friendly greeting, that many another hath done the same, though not by a sound was the silence broken. The surest pledge of a deathless name is the silent homage of thoughts unspoken. End of Section 2. Read by Liam Knowles. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 3 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. A Dutch Picture. Simon Dans has come home again, from cruising around with his buccaneers. He has singed the beard of the King of Spain, and carried away the Dean of Jane, and sold him in Algiers. In his house by the Mace, with its roof of tiles, and weathercocks flying aloft in air, there are silver tankards of antique styles, plunder of convent and castle, and piles of carpets rich and rare. In his tulip garden there by the town, overlooking the sluggish stream, with his Moorish cap and dressing gown, the old sea captain, hale and brown, walks in a waking dream. A smile in his grey mustachio lurks, whenever he thinks of the King of Spain, and the listed tulips look like Turks, and the silent gardener as he works is changed to the Dean of Jane. The windmills on the outermost verge of the landscape in the haze, to him are towers on the Spanish coast, with whiskered sentinels at their post, though this is the river Maze. But when the winter rains begin, he sits and smokes by the blazing brands, and old seafaring men come in, goat-bearded, grey, and with double chin, and rings upon their hands. They sit there in the shadow and shine of the flickering fire of the winter night, figures in colour and design like those by Rembrandt of the Rhine, half darkness and half light. And they talk of ventures lost or won, and their talk is ever and ever the same, while they drink the red wine of tarragon from the cellars of some Spanish don or convent set on flame. Restless at times with heavy strides, he paces his parlour to and fro. He is like a ship that at anchor rides, and swings with the rising and falling tides, and tugs at her anchor toe. Voices mysterious far and near, sound of the wind and sound of the sea, are calling and whispering in his ear Simon danced, why stayest thou here? Come forth and follow me. So he thinks he shall take to the sea again, for one more cruise with his buccaneers, to singe the beard of the King of Spain, and capture another Dean of Jane, and sell him in Algiers. End of section 3. Read by Liam Knowles. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 4 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Castles in Spain. How much of my young heart, O Spain, went out to thee in days of yore? What dreams romantic filled my brain, and summoned back to life again the paladins of Charlemagne, the Cid Campeador? And shapes more shadowy than these, in the dim twilight half revealed, Phoenician galleys on the seas, the Roman camps like hives of bees, the Goth uplifting from his knees Peleo on his shield. It was these memories, perchance, from annals of remotest eld, that lent the colours of romance to every trivial circumstance, and changed the form and countenance of all that I beheld. Old towns whose history lies hid in monkish chronicle and rhyme, Burgos, the birthplace of the Cid, Zamora and Valladolid, Toledo, built and walled amid the wars of Wamba's time. The long straight line of the highway, the distant town that seems so near, the peasants in the fields that stay their toil to cross themselves and pray, when from the belfry at midday the Angelus they hear. White crosses in the mountain pass, mules gay with tassels, the loud din of muleteers, the tethered ass that crops the dusty wayside grass, and cavaliers with spurs of brass alighting at the inn. White hamlets hidden in fields of wheat, white cities slumbering by the sea, white sunshine flooding square and street, dark mountain ranges at whose feet the river beds are dry with heat, all was a dream to me. Yet something sombre and severe o'er the enchanted landscape reigned, a terror in the atmosphere, as if King Philip listened near, or Torquemada the austere his ghostly sway maintained. The softer Andalusian skies dispelled the sadness and the gloom. There Cadiz by the seaside lies, and Seville's orange orchards rise, making the land a paradise of beauty and of bloom. There Cordoba is hidden among the palm, the olive, and the vine, gem of the south by poets sung, and in whose mosque Almanzor hung, as lamps the bells that once had rung at Compostella's shrine. But over all the rest supreme, the star of stars, the cynosure, the artist's and the poet's theme, the young man's vision, the old man's dream, Granada by its winding stream, the city of the Moor. And there the Alhambra still recalls Aladdin's palace of delight. Allah il Allah through its halls whispers the fountain as it falls. The Darro darts beneath its walls. The hills with snow are white. Ah yes, the hills are white with snow, and cold with blasts that bite and freeze. But in a happy vale below the orange and pomegranate grow, and wasps of air toss to and fro the blossoming almond trees. The Vega cleft by the Xenil, the fascination and allure of the sweet landscape chains the will. The traveller lingers on the hill, his parted lips are breathing still the last sigh of the Moor. How like a ruin overgrown with flowers that hide the rents of time stands now the past that I have known, Castles in Spain, not built of stone, but of white summer clouds, and blown into this little mist of rhyme. End of section 4. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 5 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Vittoria Colonna. Vittoria Colonna, on the death of her husband, the Marchesa di Pescara, retired to her castle at Ischia, in Arime, and there wrote the ode upon his death, which gained her the title of Divine. Once more, in Arime, I see thy purple hills, once more I hear the billows of the bay wash the white pebbles on the shore. High o'er the sea surge and the sands, like a great galleon wrecked and cast ashore by storms, thy castle stands, a mouldering landmark of the past. Upon its terrace walk I see a phantom gliding to and fro. It is Colonna, it is she, who lived and loved so long ago. Pescara's beautiful young wife, the type of perfect womanhood, whose life was love, the life of life, that time and change and death withstood. For death that breaks the marriage band in others only closer pressed the wedding ring upon her hand, and closer locked and barred her breast. She knew the lifelong martyrdom, the weariness, the endless pain of waiting for some one to come who never more would come again. The shadows of the chestnut trees, the odour of the orange blooms, the song of birds, and more than these, the silence of deserted rooms. The respiration of the sea, the soft caresses of the air, all things in nature seem to be but ministers of her despair. Till the o'erburdened heart so long imprisoned in itself found vent and voice in one impassioned song of inconsolable lament. Then, as the sun, though hidden from sight, transmutes to gold the leaden mist, her life was interfused with light from realms that, though unseen, exist. In Arime, thy castle on the crags above in dust shall crumble and decay, but not the memory of her love. End of section 5, read by Allan Mapstone. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 6 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The Revenge of Rain in the Face. In that desolate land and lone, where the bighorn and Yellowstone roared down their mountain path, by their fires the Sioux chiefs muttered their woes and griefs and the menace of their wrath. Revenge! Cried Rain in the Face, revenge on all the race of the white chief with yellow hair. And the mountains dark and high from their crags re-echoed the cry of his anger and despair. In the meadow spreading wide by woodland and riverside, the Indian village stood. All was silent as a dream, save the rushing of the stream and the blue jay in the wood. In his war paint and his beads, like a bison among the reeds, in ambush the Sitting Bull lay with 3,000 braves, crouched in the clefts and caves, savage and merciful. And to the fatal snare the white chief with yellow hair and his 300 men dashed headlong, sword in hand. But of that gallant band not one returned again. The sudden darkness of death overwhelmed them like the breath and smoke of a furnace fire. By the river's bank and between the rocks of the ravine they lay in their bloody attire. But the foemen fled in the night, and Rain in the Face in his flight, uplifted high in air as a ghastly trophy, bore the brave heart that beat no more of the white chief with yellow hair. Whose was the right and the wrong? Sing it, O funeral song, with a voice that is full of tears, and say that our broken faith wrought all this ruin and scathe in the year of 100 years. End of section 36. Read by William Jones.
Section 7 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. To the River Yvette. O lovely River of Yvette, O darling river, like a bride, some dimpled, bashful, fair Lisette, thou goest to wed the Orge's tide. Maincourt and lordly Dampierre see and salute thee on thy way, and with a blessing and a prayer ring the sweet bells of Saint-Forget. The valley of Chevreuse in vain would hold thee in its fond embrace, thou glidest from its arms again, and hurriest on with swifter pace. Thou wilt not stay, with restless feet pursuing still thine onward flight, thou goest as one in haste to meet her sole desire, her heart's delight. O lovely river of Yvette, O darling stream, on balanced wings the wood bird sang the chansonnette that here a wandering poet sings. End of section 7. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Sonia. Section 8 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The Emperor's Glove. Combien faudrait-il de peau d'Espagne pour faire un gant de cette grandeur? A play upon the words gant, a glove, and gant, the French for Ghent. On Saint-Bavon's tower, commanding half of Flanders, his domain, Charles the Emperor once was standing, while beneath him on the landing stood Duke Alva and his train. Like a print in books of fables, or a model made for show, with its pointed roofs and gables, dormer windows, scrolls and labels, lay the city far below. Through its squares and streets and alleys poured the populace of Ghent, as a routed army rallies, or as rivers run through valleys, hurrying to their homes they went. Nest of Lutheran misbelievers, cried Duke Alva as he gazed, haunt of traitors and deceivers, stronghold of insurgent weavers, let it to the ground be razed. On the Emperor's cap the feather nods, as laughing he replies, How many skins of Spanish leather think you would, if stitched together, make a glove of such a size? End of section 8. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Sonia.
Section 9 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. A Ballad of the French Fleet. October 1746. Mr. Thomas Prince, Loquitur. A fleet with flags arrayed sailed from the port of Brest, and the admiral's ship displayed the signal steer southwest. For this Admiral d'Anville had sworn by cross and crown to ravage with fire and steel our helpless Boston town. There were rumors in the street, in the houses there was fear of the coming of the fleet, and the danger hovering near. And while from mouth to mouth spread the tidings of dismay, I stood in the Old South, saying humbly, Let us pray. O Lord, we would not advise, but if thy providence a tempest should arise, to drive the French fleet hence, and scatter it far and wide, or sink it in the sea, we should be satisfied, and thine the glory be. This was the prayer I made, for my soul was all on flame, and even as I prayed, the answering tempest came. It came with a mighty power, shaking the windows and walls, and tolling the bell in the tower as it tolls at funerals. The lightning suddenly unsheathed its flaming sword, and I cried, "Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord." The heavens were black with cloud, the sea was white with hail, and ever more fierce and loud blew the October gale. The fleet it overtook, and the broad sails in the van, like the tents of Cushan shook o'er the curtains of Midian. Down on the reeling decks crashed the overwhelming seas. Ah, never were there wrecks so pitiful as these. Like a potter's vessel broke the great ships of the line. They were carried away as a smoke, or sank like lead in the brine. O Lord, before thy path they vanished and ceased to be, when thou didst walk in wrath with thine horses through the sea. End of section 9. Read by Phil Schempf.
Section 10 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The Leap of Roushan Beg. Mounted on Kéramos strong and fleet, his chestnut steed with 4 white feet, Roushan Beg, called Kuraglu, son of the road and bandit chief, seeking refuge and relief, up the mountain pathway flew. Such was Kéramos' wondrous speed, never yet could any steed reach the dust cloud in his course. More than maiden, more than wife, more than gold and next to life, Roushan the robber loved his horse. In the land that lies beyond Erzerum and Trebizond, garden girt his fortress stood, plundered khan or caravan, journeying north from Kurdistan, gave him wealth and wine and food. 780 men at arms his livery wore, did his bidding night and day. Now through regions all unknown he was wandering lost alone, seeking without guide his way. Suddenly the pathway ends, sheer the precipice descends, loud the torrent roars unseen. 30 feet from side to side yawns the chasm, on air must ride he who crosses this ravine. Following close in his pursuit, at the precipice's foot, Rayhan the Arab of Orpha halted with his 100 men, shouting upward from the glen, La ilaha illa Allah. Gently Roushan Beg caressed Kéramos' forehead, neck, and breast, kissed him upon both his eyes, sang to him in his wild way, as upon the topmost spray sings a bird before it flies. O my Kéramos, O my steed, round and slender as a reed, carry me this peril through. Satin housing shall be thine, shoes of gold, O Kéramos mine, O thou soul of Kuraglu. Soft thy skin as silken skein, soft as women's hair thy mane, tender are thine eyes and true, all thy hoofs like ivory shine, polished bright, O life of mine, leap and rescue Kuraglu. Kéramos then, the strong and fleet, drew together his 4 white feet, paused a moment on the verge, measured with his eyes the space, and into the air's embrace leaped as leaps the ocean surge. As the ocean surge ere sand bears a swimmer safe to land, Kéramos safe his rider bore, rattling down the deep abyss, fragments of the precipice rolled like pebbles on a shore. Roushan's tasseled cap of red trembled not upon his head, careless sat he and upright, neither hand nor bridle shook, nor his head he turned to look, as he galloped out of sight. Flash of harness in the air, seen a moment like the glare of a sword drawn from its sheath, thus the phantom horseman passed, and the shadow that he cast leaped the cataract underneath. Rayhan the Arab held his breath while this vision of life and death passed above him. Allahu, cried he, in all Kurdistan lives there not so brave a man as this robber Kuruglu. End of section 10. Read by CadenB. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 11 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Haroun Al Raschid. One day Haroun Al Raschid read a book wherein the poet said, "Where are the kings and where the rest of those who once the world possessed? They've gone with all their pomp and show, they're gone the way that thou shalt go. O thou who choosest for thy share the world and what the world calls fair, take all that it can to give or lend, but know that death is at the end." Haroun Al Raschid bowed his head, tears fell upon the page he read. End of section 11. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 12 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. King Trisanku. Viswamitra, the magician, by his spells and incantations, up to Indra's realms Elysian, raised Trisanku, king of nations. Indra and the gods offended, hurled him downward, and descending in the air he hung suspended, with these equal powers contending. Thus by aspirations lifted, by misgivings downward driven, human hearts are tossed and drifted midway between earth and heaven. End of section 12. Read by Phil Schempf. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 13 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. A Wraith in the Mist. Sir, I should build me a fortification if I came to live here. Boswell's Johnson. On the green little isle of Inchkenneth, who is it that walks by the shore, so gay with his Highland blue bonnet, so brave with his targe and claymore? His form is the form of a giant, but his face wears an aspect of pain. Can this be the Laird of Inchkenneth? Can this be Sir Allan MacLean? Ah, no, it is only the Rambler, the idler, who lives in Bolt Court, and who says where he Laird of Inchkenneth, he would wall himself round with a fort. End of section 13. Read by Bruce Kachuk. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 14 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The Three Kings. 3 kings came riding from far away, Melchior and Gaspar and Balthazar. 3 wise men out of the east were they. And they traveled by night and they slept by day, for their guide was a beautiful, wonderful star. The star was so beautiful, large, and clear that all the other stars of the sky became a white mist in the atmosphere. And by this they knew that the coming was near of the prince foretold in the prophecy. 3 caskets they bore on their saddle bows, 3 caskets of gold with golden keys. Their robes were of crimson silk, with rows of bells and pomegranates and furbelows, their turbans like blossoming almond trees. And so the 3 kings rode into the west, through the dusk of night and over hill and dell. And sometimes they nodded with beard on breast, and sometimes talked as they paused to rest, with the people they met at some wayside well. "Of the child that is born," said Balthazar, "good people, I pray you, tell us the news. For we in the east have seen his star, and have ridden fast and have ridden far, to find and worship the King of the Jews." And the people answered, You ask in vain. We know of no king but Herod the Great. They thought the wise men were men insane, as they spurred their horses across the plain, like riders in haste, and who cannot wait. And when they came to Jerusalem, Herod the Great, who had heard this thing, sent for the wise men and questioned them, and said, Go down into Bethlehem, and bring me tidings of this new king. So they rode away, and the star stood still, the only one in the gray of morn. Yes, it stopped, it stood still of its own free will, right over Bethlehem on the hill, the city of David where Christ was born. And the three kings rode through the gate and the guard, through the silent street, till their horses turned and neighed as they entered the great inn-yard. But the windows were closed, and the doors were barred, and only a light in the stable burned. And cradled there in the scented hay, in the air made sweet by the breath of kine, the little child in a manger lay, the child that would be king one day, of a kingdom not human, but divine. His mother, Mary of Nazareth, sat watching beside his place of rest, watching the even flow of his breath, for the joy of life and the terror of death were mingled together in her breast. They laid their offerings at his feet. The gold was their tribute to a king. The frankincense with its odor sweet was for the priest, the paraclete, the myrrh for the body's burying. And the mother wondered and bowed her head and sat as still as a statue of stone. Her heart was troubled, yet comforted, remembering what the angel had said of an endless reign and of David's throne. Then the kings rode out of the city gate, with a clatter of hoofs in proud array. But they went not back to Herod the Great, for they knew his malice and feared his hate, and returned to their homes by another way. End of section 14. Read by Larry Wilson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 15 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Song. Stay, stay at home, my heart, and rest. Home-keeping hearts are happiest, for those that wander they know not where, are full of trouble and full of care. To stay at home is best. Weary and homesick and distressed, they wander east, they wander west, and are baffled and beaten and blown about by the winds of the wilderness of doubt. To stay at home is best. Then stay at home, my heart, and rest. The bird is safest in its nest, or all that flutter their wings and fly. A hawk is hovering in the sky. To stay at home is best. End of section 15. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 16 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The White Czar. The White Czar is Peter the Great. Batyushka, Father Dear, and Gosudar, Sovereign, are titles the Russian people are fond of giving to the Tsar in their popular songs. Dost thou see on the rampart height that wreath of mist in the light of the midnight moon? O hist! It is not a wreath of mist, it is the Tsar, the White Czar, Batyushka Gosudar. He has heard among the dead the artillery roll o'erhead, the drums and the tramp of feet of his soldiery in the street. He is awake, the White Czar, Batiushka, Gosadar. He has heard in the grave the cries of his people, awake, arise. He has rent the gold brocade whereof his shroud was made. He is risen, the White Czar, Batiushka, Gosadar. From the Volga and the Don, he has led his armies on, over river and morass, over desert and mountain pass. The Tsar, the Orthodox Tsar, Batiushka, Gosadar. He looks from the mountain chain toward the seas that cleave in twain the continents. His hand points southward o'er the land of Rumeli. O Tsar, Batiushka, Gosadar. And the words break from his lips, I am the builder of ships, and my ships shall sail these seas to the pillars of Hercules. I say it, the White Czar, Batiushka, Gosadar. The Bosphorus shall be free, it shall make room for me, and the gates of its water streets be unbarred before my fleets. I say it, the White Czar, Batiushka, Gosadar. And the Christian shall no more be crushed as heretofore beneath thine iron rule, O Sultan of Istanbul. I swear it, I the Tsar, Batiushka, Gosadar. End of section 16. Recording by Allan Mapstone. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 17 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Delia. Sweet as the tender fragrance that survives when martyred flowers breathe out their little lives. Sweet as a song that once consoled our pain, but never will be sung to us again, is thy remembrance. Now the hour of rest hath come to thee. Sleep, darling, it is best. End of section 17. Read by Bruce Kachuk. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 18 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Nature. As a fond mother, when the day's o'er, leads by the hand her little child to bed, half willing, half reluctant to be led, and leave his broken playthings on the floor, still gazing at them through the open door, nor wholly reassured and comforted by promises of others in their stead, which, though more splendid, may not please him more. So nature deals with us, and takes away our playthings one by one, and by the hand leads us to rest so gently that we go, scarce knowing if we wished to go or stay, being too full of sleep to understand how far the unknown transcends the what we know. End of section 18, read by Lisa Dolcy. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 19 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. In the churchyard at Tarrytown. Here lies the gentle humorist who died in the bright Indian summer of his fame. A simple stone, with but a date and name, marks his secluded resting place beside the river that he loved and glorified. Here in the autumn of his days he came, but the dry leaves of life were all aflame with tints that brightened and were multiplied. How sweet a life was his! How sweet a death, living to wing with mirth the weary hours, or with romantic tales the heart to cheer, dying to leave a memory like the breath of summers, full of sunshine and of showers, a grief and gladness in the atmosphere. End of section 19. Read by Bruce Kachuk. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 20 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Eliot's Oak. Thou ancient oak, whose myriad leaves are loud, with sounds of unintelligible speech, sounds as of surges on a shingly beach, or multitudinous murmurs of a crowd, with some mysterious gift of tongues endowed. Thou speakest a different dialect to each, to me a language that no man can teach, of a lost race, long vanished like a cloud. For underneath thy shade in days remote, seated like Abraham at eventide, beneath the oaks of Mamre the unknown, apostle of the Indians, Eliot wrote his Bible in a language that hath died, and is forgotten save by thee alone. End of section 20. Read by Crimson Rose Sugg. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 21 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The Descent of the Muses. 9 sisters, beautiful in form and face, came from their convent on the shining heights of Pierus, the mountain of delights, to dwell among the people at its base. Then seemed the world to change, all time and space, splendor of cloudless days and starry nights, and men and manners and all sounds and sights had a new meaning, a diviner grace. Proud were these sisters, but were not too proud to teach in schools of little country towns science and song, and all the arts that please, so that while housewives span and farmers plowed, their comely daughters, clad in homespun gowns, learned the sweet songs of the Pierides. End of section 21. Read by Mike O'Brien. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 22 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Venice. White swan of cities, slumbering in thy nest, so wonderfully built among the reeds of the lagoon that fences thee and feeds, as saith thy old historian and thy guest. White water lily, cradled and caressed by ocean streams, and from the silt and weeds, lifting thy golden filaments and seeds, thy sun illumined spires, thy crown and crest. White phantom city, whose untrodden streets are rivers, and whose pavements are the shifting shadows of palaces and strips of sky. I wait to see thee vanish, like the fleets seen in mirage, or towers of cloud uplifting in the air their unsubstantial masonry. End of section 22. Recording by Allan Mapstone. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 23 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The Poets. O ye dead poets, who are living still, immortal in your verse, though life be fled, and ye, O living poets, who are dead, though ye are living, if neglect can kill, tell me if in the darkest hours of ill, with drops of anguish falling fast and real from the sharp crown of thorns upon your head, ye were not glad your errand to fulfill? Yes, for the gift and ministry of song have something in them so divinely sweet, it can assuage the bitterness of wrong. Not in the clamor of the crowded street, not in the shouts and plaudits of the throng, but in ourselves, our triumph and defeat. End of section 23. Read by Larry Wilson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 24 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The Poets. O ye dead poets, who are living still, immortal in your verse, though life be fled, and ye, O living poets, who are dead, though ye are living, if neglect can kill, tell me if in the darkest hours of ill, with drops of anguish falling fast and real from the sharp crown of thorns upon your head, ye were not glad your errand to fulfill? Yes, for the gift and ministry of song have something in them so divinely sweet, it can assuage the bitterness of wrong. Not in the clamor of the crowded street,
Section 24 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Parker Cleveland. Written on revisiting Brunswick in the summer of 1875. Among the many lives that I have known, none I remember more serene and sweet, more rounded in itself and more complete than his who lies beneath this funeral stone. These pines that murmur in low monotone, these walks frequented by scholastic feet, were all his world. But in this calm retreat for him the teacher's chair became a throne. With fond affection memory loves to dwell on the old days, when his example made a pastime of the toil of tongue and pen. And now, amid the groves he loved so well, that naught could lure him from their grateful shade, he sleeps, but wakes elsewhere, for God hath said, Amen. End of section 24. Read by Bruce Kachuk. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 25 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The Harvest Moon. It is the harvest moon. On gilded vanes and roofs of villages, on woodland crests and their aerial neighborhoods of nests deserted, on the curtained window panes of rooms where children sleep, on country lanes and harvest fields, its mystic splendor rests. Gone are the birds that were our summer guests. With the last sheaves return the laboring wains. All things are symbols. The external shows of nature have their image in the mind, as flowers and fruits and falling of the leaves. The songbirds leave us at the summer's close. Only the empty nests are left behind, and pipings of the quail among the sheaves. End of section 25. Read by Larry Wilson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 26 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. To the River Rhone. Thou royal river, born of sun and shower, in chambers purple with the alpine glow, wrapped in the spotless ermine of the snow, and rocked by tempests, at the appointed hour, forth like a steel-clad horseman from a tower, with clang and clink of harness dost thou go, to meet thy vassal torrents, that below rush to receive thee and obey thy power. And now thou movest in triumphal march, a king among the rivers. On thy way 100 towns await and welcome thee. Bridges uplift for thee the stately arch, vineyards encircle thee with garland gay, and fleets attend thy progress to the sea. End of section 26. Recording by Allan Mapstone. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 27 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The Three Silences of Molinos. To John Greenleaf Whittier. 3 silences there are, the first of speech, the second of desire, the third of thought. This is the lore a Spanish monk, distraught with dreams and visions, was the first to teach. These silences, comingly each with each, made up the perfect silence that he sought and prayed for, and wherein at times he caught mysterious sounds from the realms beyond our reach. O thou, whose daily life anticipates the life to come, and in whose thought and word the spiritual world preponderates, hermit of Amesbury, thou too hast heard voices and melodies from beyond the gates, and speakest only when thy soul is stirred. End of section 27. Read by Mike O'Brien. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 28 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The Two Rivers. 1. Slowly the hour hand of the clock moves round, so slowly that no human eye hath power to see it move, slowly in shine or shower. The painted ship above it, homeward bound, sails, but seems motionless, as if aground. Yet both arrive at last, and in his tower the slumbrous watchman wakes and strikes the hour. A mellow, measured, melancholy sound. Midnight. The outpost of advancing day. The frontier town and citadel of night. The watershed of time, from which the streams of yesterday and tomorrow take their way, one to the land of promise and of light, one to the land of darkness and of dreams. 2. O river of yesterday, with current swift through chasms descending, and soon lost to sight, I do not care to follow in thy flight the faded leaves that on thy bosom drift. O river of tomorrow, I uplift mine eyes, and thee I follow, as the night wanes into morning, and the dawning light broadens, and all the shadows fade and shift. I follow, follow where thy waters run, through unfrequented, unfamiliar fields, fragrant with flowers and musical with song. Still follow, follow, sure to meet the sun, and confident that what the future yields will be the right, unless myself be wrong. 3. Yet not in vain, O river of yesterday, through chasms of darkness to the deep descending, I heard thee sobbing in the rain, and blending thy voice with other voices far away. I called to thee, and yet thou wouldst not stay, but turbulent, and with thyself contending, and torrent-like thy force on pebbles spending, thou wouldst not listen to a poet's lay. Thoughts, like a loud and sudden rush of wings, regrets and recollections of things past, with hints and prophecies of things to be, and inspirations, which, could they be things, and stay with us, and we could hold them fast, where are good angels, these I owe to thee. 4. And thou, O river of tomorrow, flowing between thy narrow adamantine walls, but beautiful and white with waterfalls and wreaths of mist, like hands the pathway showing, I hear the trumpets of the morning blowing, I hear thy mighty voice that calls, and see, as Ossian saw in Morven's halls, mysterious phantoms coming, beckoning, going. It is the mystery of the unknown that fascinates us. We are children still, wayward and wistful, with one hand we cling to the familiar things we call our own, and with the other, resolute of will, grope in the darkness for what the day will bring. End of section 28. Read by Lisa Dolcy. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 29 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Boston. St. Botolph's town, hither across the plains, and fens of Lincolnshire in garb austere, there came a Saxon monk and founded here a priory, pillaged by marauding Danes, so that thereof no vestige now remains, only a name that, spoken loud and clear, and echoed in another hemisphere, survives the sculptured walls and painted panes. St. Botolph's town, far over leagues of land, and leagues of sea looks forth its noble tower, and far around the chiming bells are heard. So may that sacred name forever stand, a landmark and a symbol of the power that lies concentrated in a single word. End of section 29. Read by Liam Knowles. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 30 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. St. John's, Cambridge. I stand beneath the tree whose branches shade thy western window, chapel of St. John, and hear its leaves repeat their benison on him whose hand thy stone's memorial laid. Then I remember one of whom was said, in the world's darkest hour, Behold thy Son, and see him living still, and wandering on, and waiting for the advent long delayed. Not only tongues of the apostles teach lessons of love and light, but these expanding and sheltering boughs with all their leaves implore, and say in language clear as human speech, The peace of God that passeth understanding be and abide with you for evermore. End of section 30. Recording by Allan Mapstone. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 31 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Moods. Oh, that a song would sing itself to me out of the heart of nature, or the heart of man, the child of nature, not of art, fresh as the morning, salt as the salt sea, with just enough of bitterness to be a medicine to this sluggish mood, and start the lifeblood in my veins, and so impart healing and help in this dull lethargy. Alas! Not always doth the breath of song breathe on us. It is like the wind that bloweth at its own will, not ours, nor tarries long. We hear the sound thereof, but no man knoweth from whence it comes. So sudden and swift and strong, and whither in its wayward course it goeth. End of section 31, read by Lisa Dolcy. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 32 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Woodstock Park. Here in a little rustic hermitage, Alfred the Saxon king, Alfred the Great, postponed the cares of kingcraft to translate the consolations of the Roman sage. Here Geoffrey Chaucer, in his ripe old age, wrote the unrivalled tales, which soon or late the venturous hand that strives to imitate, vanquished must fall on the unfinished page. 2 kings were they who ruled by right divine, and both supreme, one in the realm of truth, one in the realm of fiction and of song. What prince hereditary of their line, uprising in the strength and flush of youth, their glory shall inherit and prolong? End of section 32, recording by Allan Mapstone. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 33 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The 4 Princesses at Wilna. A photograph. Sweet faces that from pictured casements lean as from a castle window, looking down on some gay pageant passing through a town, yourselves the fairest figures in the scene. With what a gentle grace, with what serene unconsciousness ye wear the triple crown of youth and beauty, and the fair renown of a great name that ne'er hath tarnished been. From your soft eyes, so innocent and sweet, 4 spirits, sweet and innocent as they, gaze on the world below, the sky above. Hark! There is someone singing in the street. Faith, hope, and love, these 3, he seems to say. These 3, and greatest of the three is love. End of section 33. Read by Bruce Kachuk. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 34 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Holidays. The holiest of all holidays are those kept by ourselves in silence and apart, the secret anniversaries of the heart, when the full river of feeling overflows, the happy days unclouded to their close, the sudden joys that out of darkness start as flames from ashes, swift desires that dart like swallows, singing down each wind that blows, white as the gleam of a receding sail, white as a cloud that floats and fades in air, white as the whitest lily on a stream. These tender memories are a fairy tale of some enchanted land we know not where, but lovely as a landscape in a dream. End of section 34. Read by Bruce Kachuk. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 35 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Wapentake to Alfred Tennyson. Poet, I come to touch thy lance with mine, not as a knight who on the listed field of tourney touched his adversary's shield in token of defiance, but in sign of homage to the mastery which is thine in English song. Nor will I keep concealed, and voiceless as a rivulet frost congealed, my admiration for thy verse divine. Not of the howling dervishes of song, who craze the brain with their delirious dance, art thou, O sweet historian of the heart. Therefore to thee the laurel leaves belong, to thee our love and our allegiance, for thy allegiance to the poet's art. End of section 35, read by Wayne Cooke. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 36 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The Broken Oar. Once upon Iceland's solitary strand, a poet wandered with his book and pen, seeking some final word, some sweet amen, wherewith to close the volume in his hand. The billows rolled and plunged upon the sand. The circling seagulls swept beyond his ken, and from the parting cloud rack, now and then, flashed the red sunset over sea and land. Then, by the billows at his feet was tossed a broken oar, and carved thereon he read, Oft was I weary when I toiled at thee. And like a man who findeth what was lost, he wrote the words, then lifted up his head and flung his useless pen into the sea. End of section 36. Read by William Jones, Bonita Springs, Florida.
Section number 37 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Virgil's First Eclogue, a translation. Melibellus. Satyrus, thou in the shade of a spreading beech tree reclining, meditatest, with slender pipe, the muse of the woodlands. We our country's bounds in pleasant pastures relinquish, we our country fly. Thou, Satyrus, stretched in the shadow, teachest the woods to resound with the name of the fair Amaryllis. To Tyrus. O Meliboeus, a god for us this leisure created, for he will be unto me a god forever. His altar oftentimes shall imbue a tender lamb from our sheepfolds. He, my heifers to wander at large, and myself, as thou seest, on my rustic reed to play what I will, hath permitted. Meliboeus. Truly I envy not, I marvel rather. On all sides and all the fields is such trouble. Behold, my goats I am driving, heartsick, further away. This one scarce to Tyrus lead I. For having here yeaned twins just now among the dense hazels, hope of the flock got me, on the naked flint she hath left them. Often this evil to me, if my mind had not been insensate, oak trees stricken by heaven predicted, as now I remember. Often the sinister crow from the hollow ilex predicted. Nevertheless, who this god may be, O Tityrus, tell me. Tityrus. O Meliboeus, the city that they call Rome I imagined, foolish I, to be like this of ours, where often we shepherds wanted are to drive down of our ewes the delicate offspring. Thus whelps like unto dogs had I known, and kids to their mothers. Thus to compare great things with small had I been accustomed. But this among other cities its head as far hath exalted, as the cypresses do among the lissom viburnums. Meliboeus. And what so great occasion of seeing Rome hath possessed thee? Tityrus. Liberty, which, though late, looked upon me in my inertness, after the time when my beard fell whiter from me in shaving, yet she looked upon me, and came to me after a long while, since Amaryllis possesses and Galatea hath left me. For I will even confess that while Galatea possessed me, neither care of my flock nor hope of liberty was there, though from my wattled folds there went forth many a victim, and the unctuous cheese was pressed for the city ungrateful. Never did my right hand return home heavy with money. Meliboeus. I have wondered why sad thou invokest the gods, Amaryllis, and for whom thou didst suffer the apples to hang on the branches. Tityrus hence was absent. Thee, Tityrus, even the pine trees, thee, the very fountains, the very copses were calling. Tityrus. What could I do? No power had I to escape from my bondage, nor had I power elsewhere to recognize gods so propitious. Here I beheld that youth to whom each year, Meliboeus, during twice 6 days ascends the smoke of our altars. Here first gave he response to me soliciting favor. Feed as before your heifers, ye boys, and yoke up your bullocks. Meliboeus. Fortunate old man! So then thy fields will be left thee, and large enough for thee, thou naked stone in the marish, all thy pasture lands with a druggy rush may encompass. No unaccustomed food thy gravid ewes shall endanger, nor of the neighboring flock the dire contagion infect them. Fortunate old man! Here among familiar rivers and these sacred founts shalt thou take the shadowy coolness. On this side, a hedge along the neighboring crossroad, where Hyblean bees ever feed on the flower of the willow, often with gentle susurrus to fall asleep shall persuade thee. Yonder beneath the high rock the pruner shall sing to the breezes, nor meanwhile shall thy heart's delight, the hoarse wood pigeons, nor the turtle doves cease to mourn from aerial elm trees. Tityrus. Therefore the agile stag shall sooner feed in the ether, and the billows lead the fishes bare on the seashore. Sooner, the borderlands of both overpassed, shall the exiled part thee and drink of the Saone, or the German drink of the Tigris, than the face of him shall glide away from my bosom. Meliboeus. But we hence shall go, a part to the thirsty Africs, part to Scythia come and the rapid Cretan Oxes, and to the Britons from all the universe utterly sundered. Ah, shall I ever, a long time hence, the bounds of my country, and the roof of my lowly cottage covered with greensward, seeing, with wonder behold, my kingdoms, a handful of wheat ears? Shall an impious soldier possess these lands newly cultured? and these fields of corn a barbarian? Lo, whither discord us wretched people hath brought, for whom our fields we have planted. Graft, Meliboeus, thy pear trees now, put in order thy vineyards. Go, my goats, go hence, my flocks so happy aforetime. Never again henceforth outstretched in my verdurous cavern shall I behold you afar from the bushy precipice hanging. Songs no more shall I sing, not with me, ye goats, as your shepherd, shall ye browse on the bitter willow or blooming laburnum. To Tyrus. Nevertheless, this night together with me canst thou rest thee, here on the verdant leaves. For us there are mellowing apples, chestnuts soft to the touch, and clouded cream in abundance, and the high roofs now of the villages smoke in the distance, and from the lofty mountains are falling larger the shadows. End of section number 37. Read by Lane. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 38 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Ovid in Exile, at Tomis in Bessarabia, near the mouths of the Danube. Tristia, Book 3, Elegy 10. Should anyone there in Rome remember Ovid the exile, and without me my name still in the city survive, tell him that under the stars which never set in the ocean, I am existing still, here in a barbarous land. Fierce Sarmatians encompass me round, and the Bessi and Getae, names how unworthy to be sung by a genius like mine. Yet when the air is warm, intervening Ister defends us. He, as he flows, repels inroads of war with his waves. But when the dismal winter reveals its hideous aspect, when all the earth becomes white with a marble-like frost, and when Boreas is loosed, and the snow hurled under Arcturus, then these nations, in sooth, shudder and shiver with cold. Deep lies the snow, and neither the sun nor the rain can dissolve it. Boreas hardens it still, makes it forever remain. Hence, ere the first has melted away, another succeeds it, and 2 years it is wont in many places to lie. And so great is the power of the north wind awakened, it levels lofty towers with the ground, roofs uplifted bears off. Wrapped in skins, and with trousers sewed, they contend with the weather, and their faces alone of the whole body are seen. Often their tresses, when shaken, with pendant icicles tinkle, and their whitened beards shine with the gathering frost. Wines consolidate stand, preserving the form of the vessels. No more draughts of wine, pieces presented they drink. Why should I tell you how all the rivers are frozen and solid, and from out of the lake frangible water is dug? Ister, no narrower stream than the river that bare the papyrus, which through its many mouths mingles its waves with the deep. Ister with hardening winds congeals its cerulean waters, under a roof of ice winding its way to the sea. There where ships have sailed, men go on foot, and the billows, solid made by the frost, hoof beats of horses indent. Over unwonted bridges, with water gliding beneath them, the Sarmatian steers drag their barbarian carts. Scarcely shall I be believed, yet when naught is gained by a falsehood, absolute credence then should to a witness be given. I have beheld the vast black sea of ice all compacted, and a slippery crust pressing its motionless tides. 'Tis not enough to have seen, I have trodden this indurate ocean, dry shod past my foot over its uppermost wave. If thou hadst had of old such a sea as this is Leander, then thy death had not been charged as a crime to the strait. Nor can the curved dolphins uplift themselves from the water. All their struggles to rise merciless winter prevents, And though Boreas sound with roar of wings in commotion, in the blockaded gulf never a wave will there be. And the ships will stand hemmed in by the frost, as in marble, nor will the oar have power through the stiff waters to cleave. Fast bound in the ice have I seen the fishes adhering, yet notwithstanding this, some of them still were alive. Hence, if the savage strength of omnipotent Boreas freezes, whether the salt sea wave, whether the refulent stream, straightway the Ister made level by arid blasts of the north wind, comes the barbaric foe borne on his swift-footed steed, foe that powerful made by his steed and his far-flying arrows all the neighboring land void of inhabitants makes. Some take flight, and none being left to defend their possessions. Unprotected, their goods pillage and plunder become. Cattle and creaking carts, the little wealth of the country, and what riches beside indigent peasants possess. Some as captives are driven along, their hands bound behind them, looking backward in vain toward their lares and lands. Others, transfixed with barbed arrows, in agony perish. For the swift arrowheads all have in poison been dipped. What they cannot carry or lead away they demolish, and the hostile flames burn up the innocent cots. Even when there is peace, the fear of war is impending. None, with the plowshare pressed, furrows the soil any more. Either this region sees, or fears a foe that it sees not, and the sluggish land slumbers in utter neglect. No sweet grape lies hidden here in the shade of its vine leaves. No fermenting must fills and overflows the deep vats. Apples the region denies, nor would Acontius have found here aught upon which to write words for his mistress to read. Naked and barren plains, without leaves or trees we behold here, places, alas, unto which no happy man would repair. Since then this mighty orb lies open so wide upon all sides, has this region been found only my prison to be? Tristia, Book 3, Elegy 12. Now the zephyrs diminish the cold, and the year being ended, winter Maeotian seems longer than ever before, and the ram that bore unsafely the burden of Helle now makes the hours of the day equal with those of the night. Now the boys and the laughing girls the violet gather, which the fields bring forth, nobody sowing the seed. Now the meadows are blooming with flowers of various colors, and with untaught throats carol the garrulous birds. Now the swallow, to shun the crime of her merciless mother, under the rafters builds cradles and dear little homes. And the blay that lay hid, covered up in the furrows of Ceres, now from the tepid ground raises its delicate head. Where there is ever a vine, the bud shoots forth from the tendrils, but from the Getic shore, distant afar is the vine. Where there is ever a tree, on the tree the branches are swelling, but from the Getic land, distant afar is the tree. Now it is holiday there in Rome, and to games in due order give place the windy wars of the vociferous bar. Now they are riding the horses, with light arms now they are playing, now with the ball, and now round rolls the swift-flying hoop. Now, when the young athlete with flowing oil is anointed, he in the Virgin's fount bathes, overwearied his limbs. Thrives the stage, and applause, with voices at variance, thunders, and the theatres, three for the three forums resound. 4 times happy is he, and times without number is happy, who the city of Rome uninterdicted enjoys. But all I see is the snow in the vernal sunshine dissolving, and the waters no more delved from the indurate lake. Nor is the sea now frozen, nor as before o'er the Ister comes the Sarmatian boar, driving his stridulous cart. Hitherward, nevertheless, some keels already are steering, and on this Pontic shore alien vessels will be. Eagerly shall I run to the sailor, and having saluted, who he may be I shall ask, wherefore and whence he hath come. Strange indeed will it be, if he come not from regions adjacent, and incautious unless ploughing the neighing sea. Rarely a mariner over the deep from Italy passes. Rarely he comes to these shores, wholly of harbours devoid. Whether he knoweth Greek, or whether in Latin he speaketh, surely on this account he the more welcome will be. Also perchance from the mouth of the strait and the waters Propontic, unto the steady south wind some one is spreading his sails. Whosoever he is, the news he can faithfully tell me, which may become a part and an approach to the truth. He, I pray, may be able to tell me the triumphs of Caesar, which he has heard of, and vows paid to the Latian Jove, and that thy sorrowful head, Germania, thou, the rebellious, under the feet at last of the great captain hast laid. Whoso shall tell me these things, that not to have seen will afflict me, forthwith unto my house welcomed as a guest shall he be. Woe is me! Is the house of Ovid in Scythian lands now? And doth punishment now give me its place for a home? Grant, ye gods, that Caesar make this not my house and my homestead, but decree it to be only the inn of my pain. End of section 38. Read by Phil Schempf. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 39 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. On the Terrace of the Égalades. From the French of Méry. From this high portal, where upsprings the rose to touch our hands in play, we at a glance behold three things: the sea, the town, and the highway. And the sea says, "My shipwrecks fear. I drown my best friends in the deep, and those who braved my tempests here among my seaweeds lie asleep." The town says, "I am filled and fraught with tumult and with smoke and care. My days with toil are overwrought, and in my nights I gasp for air." The highway says, "My wheel tracks guide to the pale climates of the north, where my last milestones dance abide the people to their death gone forth. Here in the shade this life of ours, full of delicious air, glides by amid a multitude of flowers, as countless as the stars on high. These red-tiled roofs, this fruitful soil, bathed with an azure all divine, where springs the tree that gives us oil, the grape that giveth us the wine. Beneath these mountains, stripped of trees, whose tops with flowers are covered o'er, where springtime of the Hesperides begins, but endeth nevermore. Under these leafy vaults and walls, that unto gentle sleep persuade, this rainbow of the waterfalls, of mingled mist and sunshine made. Upon these shores, where all invites we live our languid life apart, the air is that of life's delights, the festival of sense and heart. This limpid space of time prolong, forget tomorrow in today, and leave unto the passing throng the sea, the town, and the highway. End of section 39. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Sonia.
Section 40 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. To My Brooklet, from the French of Ducis. Thou brooklet, all unknown to song, hid in the covert of the wood, ah yes, like thee I fear the throng, like thee I love the solitude. O brooklet, let my sorrows past lie all forgotten in their graves, till in my thoughts remain at last only thy peace, thy flowers, thy waves. The lily by the margin waits, the nightingale, the marguerite. In shadow here he meditates, his nest, his love, his music sweet. Near thee the self-collected soul knows naught of error or of crime. Thy waters, murmuring as they roll, transform his musings into rhyme. Ah, when on bright autumnal eves, pursuing still thy course, shall I list the soft shudder of the leaves, and hear the lapwing's plaintive cry? End of section 40. Read by Allan Mapstone. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 41 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Barège, from the French of Le Front de Pompignan. I leave you, ye cold mountain chains, dwelling of warriors stark and frore. You may these eyes behold no more, save on the horizon of our plains. Vanish, ye frightful gloomy views, ye rocks that mount up to the clouds, of skies enwrapped in misty shrouds, impracticable avenues. Ye torrents that with might and main break pathways through the rocky walls, with your terrific waterfalls fatigue no more my weary brain. Arise, ye landscapes full of charms, arise, ye pictures of delight, ye brooks that water in your flight the flowers and harvests of our farms. You I perceive, ye meadows green, where the Garonne the lowland fills, not far from that long chain of hills with intermingled vales between. Yon wreath of smoke that mounts so high, methinks from my own hearth must come. With speed to that beloved home, fly, ye too lazy coursers, fly. And bear me thither, where the soul in quiet may itself possess, where all things soothe the mind's distress, where all things teach me and console. End of section 41. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Sonia.
Section number 42 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Forsaken. From the German. Something the heart must have to cherish, must love and joy and sorrow learn, something with passion clasp or perish, and in itself to ashes burn. So to this child my heart is clinging, in its frank eyes, with look intense, me from a world of sin or bringing back to a world of innocence. Disdain must thou endure forever, strong may thy heart in danger be. Thou shalt not fail, but ah, be never false as thy father was to me. Never will I forsake thee faithless, and thou my mother ne'er forsake, until her lips are white and breathless, until in death her eyes shall break. End of section number 42. Read by Lane. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 43 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Allah, from the German of Maumann. Allah gives light in darkness, Allah gives rest in pain. Cheeks that are white with weeping, Allah paints red again. The flowers and the blossoms wither, years vanish with flying feet, but my heart will live on forever, that here in sadness beat. Gladly to Allah's dwelling, yonder would I take flight. There will the darkness vanish, there will my eyes have sight. End of section 43, read by Allan Mapstone. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 44 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Sonnet I, The Artist, a translation from the Italian of Michael Angelo. Nothing the greatest artist can conceive that every marble block doth not confine within itself, and only its design the hand that follows intellect can achieve. The ill I flee, the good that I believe in thee, fair lady, lofty and divine, thus hidden lie. And so that death be mine, art of desired success doth me bereave. Love is not guilty then, nor thy fair face, nor fortune, cruelty, nor great disdain of my disgrace, nor chance, nor destiny, if in thy heart both death and love find place at the same time, and if my humble brain, burning, can nothing draw but death from thee. End of section 44. Recording by Algy Pugg. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 45 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Sonnet II, Fire, a translation from the Italian of Michael Angelo. Not without fire can any workman mould the iron to his preconceived design, nor can the artist without fire refine and purify from all its dross the gold, nor can revive the phoenix, we are told, except by fire. Hence, if such death be mine, I hope to rise again with the divine, whom death augments, and time cannot make old. O sweet, sweet death! O fortunate fire that burns within me still to renovate my days, though I am almost numbered with the dead! If by its nature unto heaven returns this element, me, kindled in its blaze, will it bear upward when my life is fled? End of section 45. Recording by Algy Pugg. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 46 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Sonnet III, Youth and Age, a translation from the Italian of Michael Angelo. Oh, give me back the days when loose and free to my blind passion were the curb and rein. Oh, give me back the angelic face again, with which all virtue buried seemed to be. Oh, give my panting footsteps back to me, that are in age so slow and fraught with pain, and fire and moisture in the heart and brain, if thou wouldst have me burn and weep for thee. If it be true thou liv'st alone, amour, on the sweet bitter tears of human hearts, in an old man thou canst not wake desire, souls that have almost reached the other shore of a diviner love should feel the darts, and be as tinder to a holier fire. End of section 46. Recording by Allan Mapstone. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 47 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Sonnet IV, Old Age, a translation from the Italian of Michael Angelo. The course of my long life hath reached at last, in fragile bark o'er a tempestuous sea, the common harbour where must rendered be account of all the actions of the past. The impassioned fantasy that, vague and vast, made art an idol and a king to me, was an illusion, and but vanity were the desires that lured me and harassed. The dreams of love that were so sweet of yore What are they now, when two deaths may be mine? One sure, and one forecasting its alarms. Painting and sculpture satisfy no more, the soul now turning to the love divine, that oped to embrace us on the cross its arms. End of section 47, recording by Allan Mapstone. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 48 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Sonnet I to Vittoria Colonna, a translation from the Italian of Michael Angelo. Lady, how can it chance? Yet this we see in long experience, that will longer last a living image carved from quarries vast than its own maker, who dies presently. Cause yieldeth to effect, if this so be, and even nature is by art surpassed. This know I, who to art have given the past, but see that time is breaking faith with me. Perhaps on both of us long life can I, either in colour or in stone bestow, by now portraying each in look and mien, so that 1,000 years after we die, how fair thou wast, and I how full of woe, and wherefore I so loved thee may be seen. End of section 48. Recording by Algy Pugg. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 49 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Sonnet VI to Vittoria Colonna, a translation from the Italian of Michael Angelo. When the prime mover of my many sighs Heaven took through death from out her earthly place, Nature, that never made so fair a face, remained ashamed, and tears were in all eyes. O fate, unheeding my impassioned cries! O hopes fallacious! O thou spirit of grace, where art thou now? Earth holds in its embrace thy lovely limbs, thy holy thoughts the skies. Vainly did cruel death attempt to stay the rumour of thy virtuous renown, that Lethe's waters could not wash away. 1,000 leaves, since he hath stricken thee down, speak of thee, nor to thee could heaven convey, except through death, a refuge and a crown. End of section 49. Recording by Algy Pugg. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Section 50 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Dante, a translation from the Italian of Michael Angelo. What should be said of him cannot be said. By too great splendour is his name attended. To blame is easier those who him offended, than reach the faintest glory round him shed. This man descended to the doomed and dead, for our instruction, then to God ascended. Heaven opened wide to him its portals splendid, who from his countries closed against him fled. Ungrateful land, to his own prejudice, nurse of his fortunes, and this showeth well, that the most perfect most of grief shall see. Among 1,000 proofs let one suffice, that as his exile hath no parallel, ne'er walked the earth a greater man than he. End of section 50, read by Allan Mapstone. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 51 of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Canzone, a translation from the Italian of Michael Angelo. Ah me, when thinking of the years, the vanished years, alas, I do not find among them all one day that was my own. Fallacious hopes, desires of the unknown, lamenting, loving, burning, and in tears, for human passions all have stirred my mind, have held me, now I feel and know, confined, both from the true and good, still far away. I perish day by day. The sunshine fails, the shadows grow more dreary, and I am near to fall, infirm and weary. End of section 51, read by Allan Mapstone. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. End of Kéramos and Other Poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow.